Hello and welcome back to the Villa Filler podcast. I'm here, as always, with my good friend Dan Wiseman. Dan, it's your favourite time of the football season. It's that break from domestic football. It's the international break. How you doing, mate?
Beautiful. I see you in that England shirt, and it can only mean one thing, my good man. I'm very, very good. Always nice to see you on a day where we're not talking Villa, especially at the moment, because it's been a bit difficult in the last few pods, hasn't it? So it's been nice to have a bit of a change of scenery, I suppose. Look ahead to some England games where hopefully, given our opponents, we're going to get some goals under our belt. Hopefully see Smiley Watkins as well. It'd be nice for him to maybe get a couple of, San Marino.
Absolutely.
You're looking at that thinking,
put your mortgage on it.
Absolutely, there's a good chance he'll get off the mark on his debut, which would be great. But then you've got I think Poland are going to be a really good test. They've got some really nice. Obviously, we all know the strengths that they've got. So I think there'll be a nice range of games to really figure out this England side ahead of the Euros.
And before we go into that, Dan, because we're not, as we kind of mentioned on the last Villa Filler podcast, we're not necessarily going to preview this San Marino game. We'll probably preview England's next game just in between with the coverage we do for the San Marino game post-match. But Dan, this isn't a video specifically about a game. This isn't about who we're going to play or whatever. This is about squad selection. And you guys will have seen from the title right now, you guys know this is a Villa channel. If you guys who are watching aren't Villa fans, it's great to have you. If you'd like to subscribe, we do cover a lot of other football, international football. So if you're not a Villa fan, I'm sure you will enjoy this. But this is for the Villa fans who have been screaming from the rooftops, Dan, in Birmingham, in the West Midlands, why EZRI Konsa hasn't been included in the squad. It's a very contentious subject, and it actually brought out a bit of infighting between EZRI and Mings on Twitter, which I've got to say, very disappointed in seeing the people who were saying Ty didn't deserve to go and EZRI should have gone ahead of him. We should be celebrating that, that we have two Villa players, in Watkins and Tyrone in the squad. So less of that, please, guys. But EZRI, you guys, you're more than within your right to be aggrieved, because EZRI Konsa, Dan, of course we're biased, has been one of the best centre-backs this year in the Premier League. It has to be said. Mm-hmm. Now, there are reasons why he hasn't gone, and we're going to get into that, but we're also going to highlight the reasons why he should go. We're going to have a look at some of the competition who he's up against, see how he kind of compares against them, see how he would fit in the side. And also, Dan, throwing a complete spanner in the works, because I don't think I mentioned this to you, we're going to look at his Portuguese counterparts who he could potentially align himself up with. Because as we know, EZRI Konsa is eligible for Portugal. He's also, I believe, eligible for the Dominican Republic of Congo, but has ruled that out in the past. He said he wouldn't play for Congo. England is his dream. However, I feel like if there's an England snub, there is potential for a Portuguese call-up, and there's no disrespect at all to Congo. I think most players would like to play for Portugal if given the chance. Saying that, though, Dan, there's been loads of English players recently who have been changing their allegiances, playing for a lot of these Caribbean or African teams where they have family history. I mean, the Jamaican team looks absolutely stacked now. You've got people like Roof, I believe, playing for them, Mikel Antonio. They've got a really good squad lining up. So maybe EZRI does want to join where his ancestors have been before, but I highly doubt it. I feel like if it's between England and Portugal, we're hoping it's England, obviously, but you can understand him if he wanted to play for Portugal. So we'll get into that later. But Dan, first of all, this is something, and this is me being really nitpicky, right? People assign player ratings all the time. It's great. We love that. That's absolutely amazing. Everyone has been tweeting saying, why has EZRI not been in the squad? He's been a 7 out of 10 every single game. I'm sorry, he's been a 6.82 according to Who Scored. Sorry to be really pedantic, guys, but he's not quite been a 7 out of 10. So I think that's why he's not quite there in the squad. But Dan, 11 clean sheets in the Premier League so far this season. Will have conceded 30 goals with EZRI in the side, which is an average of 0.86 per 90. He's within the top 25 percentile of centre-backs across Europe's top 5 leagues for blocks made over the past year. And as we've just alluded to there, 6.82 average match rating. Really solid stuff from EZRI. And from a Villa perspective, he's been absolutely phenomenal, Dan.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Absolutely. I think when you're talking about players of the season, they've got to come from that back line, I think. I think you've got to consider the likes of Emi, Matt, but, probably seriously staking their claim for that. And the player awards at the end of the season is going to be hot stuff, isn't it? That is, whoever gets that award, there's going to be a lot of competition. Usually, in the last few seasons, it's been pretty nailed on. You can give it Jack. Don't even bother with the awards ceremony. But this year, there's going to be some hot competition for that, and EZRI's name is right in the ring. It's nice to see that before we kickstart this, that the Kazoo Alliance that led the league at the start of the season has come back, because both Villa and Everton fans, I should say, have come together in feeling pretty aggrieved that their centre-backs are not in the England squad. And I can understand that. I think Michael Keane and Ben Godfrey have been exceptional as well this season for Everton, and I can understand why they're feeling pretty aggrieved. But EZRI, for me, is probably the biggest snub out of this England squad. I can understand why Villa fans are very aggrieved, but as you know, I'm going to play a devil's advocate a little bit on this. And so I was doing my research, Dan, and I've come up with a sort of preliminary 32-man squad for the Euros, right? Here we are.
I feel like this is a separate podcast.
That haven't been included in this England squad. So this is all the players
32.
Are you ready for these names? This is the competition for this England squad is crazy. So this is players that are injured or just out of form or haven't been included, but realistically, with a good run, could stand a chance of being in the conversation. So, buckle up.
Oh my God, I'm excited.
Jordan Pickford, Trent Alexander-Arnold, EZRI Konsa, Michael Keane, Joe Gomez, Matt Targett, Dele Alli, Jack Grealish, Jordan Henderson, Patrick Bamford, Mason Greenwood, Jadon Sancho, James Maddison, Ben Godfrey, Danny Ings, James Justin, James Tarkowski, Ben Mee, Dwight McNeil, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, Matty Cash, Emil Smith-Rowe, Harvey Barnes, Tammy Abraham, Harry Winks, Danny Ings, Callum Hudson-Odoi, Curtis Jones, and if you're really, really reaching, James Tavernier and Connor Goldson. Now, that is crazy.
Shout out to Scott.
That's yes, absolutely. Those are all the players that aren't in this current 26-man squad. So the amount of talent that Gareth Southgate's got to mine through to pick his squad is not an easy job. So understandably, there's always going to be people that are disappointed. But as you led with those stats at the top, then I think there aren't many that can be more upset than EZRI.
And you've just listed a whole host of players there. And interestingly, in some of the defenders that I've kind of written down here, who, again, I feel are probably fairly aggrieved to not be included in the squad. We've got Michael Keane, Ben Godfrey, Lewis Dunk as well, a defender who I think rarely puts a foot wrong. If anything, he's kind of a victim of being this more old-fashioned centre-half. Plays, he's well up there in terms of passing statistics, pass accuracy. You know how Graham Potter's Brighton side plays. So it's fair to assume that he would actually translate that form quite well into a back three that Gareth Southgate is notorious for playing. I don't think he necessarily has that versatility of being able to play in a two, which other defenders may have. But, you've just listed so many players there, Dan. Tarkowski, me, also, outside shouts, but playing in a very defensive side, make plenty of blocks, plenty of interceptions, well up there in terms of heading stats. Again, when you're looking at defensive actions, they're right up there. And I feel like the defenders that England have gone for, they're really not glamorous, Dan. I mean, we're looking at the four centre-halves, if we're going to exclude Kyle Walker, who can, of course, play there. I do think as well, if you have to, absolutely have to, I think Reece James can play there. But that's a whole different story. I think he's much better suited in the midfield as well. But of the four defenders who are in this current squad, Dan, for this international break, four central defenders, you've got Tyrone Mings, Eric Dyer, Harry Maguire, and John Stones. And instantly two names stick out there, don't they, Dan? Two names who you think, hang on, are they really in the squad? And of course, it's not Tyrone Mings or John Stones. It's Dyer and Maguire. And first of all, again, I think what the reasons that I've just given for the likes of Tarkowski, for me, for Dunk, for not being able to get in this squad, I actually think Konsa is a victim of that as well. Because when you look at EZRI Konsa, yes, he has this wonderful 85% pass success rate, which is remarkable. Progressive passes aren't quite up there for EZRI. He's not necessarily this forward-thinking defender. He is actually a stopper, but he's blessed with pace. He's blessed with strength. That, of course, are two important attributes in what makes up a modern defender. If you're looking at EZRI this season, he's made 109 clearances, down 62 of which have been headed. He's won 68 aerial duels. He averages 2 blocks per 90, averaging 2.44 aerials per 90. He's made 16 tackles so far in the defensive third. He's a stopper. And I think he's not as, when you look at Tyrone Mings, someone who is, of course, vulnerable to making these some forms of lapses of concentration. He's not necessarily the most reliable defender. Of course, there's bags of ability there, so there is no doubt in that. And being a left-footed defender as well, that's somewhat of a premium. It's a luxury if you've got that in the squad. Of course, he's gonna travel, but EZRI is not this progressive defender that, let's say, a Stones is or a Mings is in this side. The two sort of stoppers you've got in this squad that Gareth has selected are Dyer and Maguire. And, there's plenty of cases that people have made for them being included or for not being included. I think something that can't be overlooked, Dan, is versatility. And again, we didn't include Kyle Walker in this kind of deep dive of the centre halves, but he can play there. Eric Dyer can play there. He can play central midfield as well. He's been in the squad a few times. I can see why Dyer has gone. Do I think he should have necessarily gone, though? Absolutely not. But sometimes you have to be versatile. And at the moment, I think EZRI is quite one-dimensional in his style. That's not me saying I don't think he can be this progressive ball-playing centre-half. I very much think he can be that. As I say, 85% pass accuracy, very good. You just want to see him take a few more risks, make these more progressive passes, which again, you just kind of have to look in context, Dan. Tyrone makes them plays for Villa, really, doesn't he? So it's, if you're looking at a pair, it doesn't get better really as a sort of centre-back pairing, does it?
Well, no, and that leads me perfectly on to, I see a lot of Villa fans, as you said at the top of the pod, really not lambasting Tyrone, it's a bit strong, but like giving him a hard time quite frequently and saying that EZRI Konsa is by far the better defender. I don't personally know who the better defender is out of those two. I think EZRI Konsa has had the better season, but in terms of who the better defender is, the reason why Tyrone has gone is because, and the reason why they work too well together is because Tyrone is a proactive defender and EZRI is a reactive defender. And this is shown in the stats. So Tyrone leads in terms of just him and EZRI Konsa, he has more interceptions than EZRI, more clearances than EZRI, more recoveries, more duels won, less duels lost, and more passes. But then as a result of all that, has more fouls and yellow cards. So you often see Tyrone coming out of the defence, stepping forward, and EZRI Konsa operating not quite as a sweeper, but as the covering centre-back out of the two. EZRI sort of drops in, and that's why you see him, he leads the leads in blocks. He's only made 17 tackles in the 25 appearances that he's made. So that's telling you that Tyrone is the one that's stepping out, stopping, and when you've got EZRI Konsa, as we often see him, making those 33 blocks that you talked about, Dan, throwing himself in front of shots in around the 18-yard box. That's where he comes into his own. And so Tyrone, I can see, EZRI was also, you talked about that pass completion rate. His pass completion is about 7% higher than Mings, but Mings, as you said, is much more experimental. He likes those long raking passes, doesn't he? So a 7% higher pass completion rate is probably what you'd expect out of the two. But that's why they work so well together. And I think that's why Mings has gone, and it's only recently why EZRI Konsa is starting to earn the plaudits that he deserves, is because when you watch Villa, Mings is the one that catches the eye because he's going out, he's doing all this experimental stuff. He used to play at left back, so he's got those abilities to dribble with the ball. He's actually made more crosses than you'd think as well for Villa this season. You often see him operating in the final third. And so Mings, he's in the squad. And I don't think it can be overlooked how important his left foot is because England aren't blessed with left-footed players. It's certainly not, we've got this amazing crop of talent, but not too many left footers.
They're all right backs.
So, yeah, well, that's the thing. That's the thing. And one of the things I just wanted to touch on in this pod is that we're going to speak about EZRI potentially lining up for Portugal. Matty Cash can play for Poland through his grandmother, I believe. And so with this amazing, though Gareth Southgate did actually name drop him in his presser as a player that he considered. So Matty's getting there. He's getting there. I think he's still, when you consider that Trent hasn't been called up or Wan-Bissaka, I think, unfortunately, he probably still falls down that pecking order just a little bit, but he's getting there. But Tyrone, I don't think anyone can say that he doesn't deserve an England call-up. As I said, he leads in all those metrics. And I think in terms of what Southgate wants to create from his defenders, especially when you've got the likes of Eric Dyer, Harry Maguire, who aren't exactly blessed on the ball, you've got Tyrone Mings, who does have those abilities.
I think, as well, one of the sort of easier criticisms that has been thrown at Gareth, just in terms of general selection overall, is the fact that Villa have the third best defensive record in the Premier League this season. All players, of course, are English who line up in that back four, why not pick them all? It's not always as simple as that, unfortunately. I think Target should really be in the squad. I think he's done much better than Luke Shaw, but I think it's more the recovery story for Luke Shaw in the kind of where he's been physically and mentally over the past few years, how he hasn't quite reached up to the potential from his Southampton days and the early Manchester United days. Of course, he's in fine form this season, but Matt Target for me, someone who should be in there. But Dan, when we're looking at the defenders again, and to bring back the average match rating, again, stats, they tell a story. They don't tell all the story. Eye test does as well. And Harry Maguire he's an awkward one for me because I do really like him. And I feel like if I ever made it professional, that is the type of centre-back that I would be. I'm not the quickest. He's a throwback. And I've got a lot of time for that. But what I don't have a lot of time for is the price tag. And I think that is something that, unfortunately, it shouldn't, but does overshadow a lot of what Harry Maguire is actually good at. Now, he is an average match rating 6.98 so far this season, which is second out of the four defenders only to John Stones, who's first with a 7.2, who should absolutely be in the squad. Eric Dyer, on the other hand, 6.72 average match rating, which is, of course, less than EZRI's 6.82. He's not really played as much either, Dyer. He's not played in his last in Tottenham's last 5 games, I don't believe. And again, I see why he's gone. But when you're looking at who is, when you're ranking them in terms of numbers and in terms of stats, Dyer falls at the bottom. So, of course, he's the one who you look at for EZRI, taking his spot. But someone who you absolutely cannot discredit so far this season, Dan, John Stones, as I said, 7.2 match rating. He's been absolutely fantastic. He's averaging 1.44 blocks per 90. He's made 10 tackles in the defensive third. He's a goal-scoring centre-back. He's within the top 5 percentile of defenders with a high XG so far over the past year, which is absolutely remarkable. And again, another player, when you talk about Luke Shaw, who's made quite a comeback because a lot of people had written off John Stones 3 or 4 years ago. Again, price tag probably hinders a lot of people's perceptions on him as well. But looking out of all of these players, Dan, Mings, an average of 1.86 blocks per 90. Dyer, 1.83 blocks per 90. Maguire, 1.36 blocks per 90. Stones, 1.44 blocks per 90. Of course, these things have to be taken within context. Villa, more often than not, will be under the cosh a lot more than a Harry Maguire, which would explain why his is lower. John Stones, of course, would have to make less blocks with how Manchester City play. You're looking at a decent figure with Mings. And again, Dyer, Tottenham are a very defensive side. So naturally his are going to be in the sort of upper echelons there. But, EZRI's made the most blocks on average out of all of them. He's tied for the most tackles in the defensive third with Mings and Maguire, who are at top. So it is hard to really explain why he's not made the squad, isn't it, Dan? Because there are, when you look at the numbers, when you look at the eye test, EZRI's very easy on the eye. I think he does kind of go about his business a bit quietly because, as you alluded to earlier, Dan, Mings is and to use a word that you use in almost every single podcast, more philanthropical. I think I've said that right. I had to get it in because you haven't mentioned it yet. But, he's the more expressive defender. But, it is very hard to make a case for Konsa not to get in based off the numbers and the eye test, Dan.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And look, I think one thing to consider, I think this is something that Southgate referenced in one of his presses, is that understandably at this point, when you're so close to a Euros, you want to work with players whom you've used before, who you can trust. That's why I think, if we're talking about left backs that can feel pretty aggrieved to not be in the squad, whilst Target is definitely in that conversation, I don't think you can look much further than Aaron Cresswell, who's been fantastic for West Ham. But he's going to pick Shaw and Chilwell ahead of them because he's worked with them before. It's why you're going to see Eric Dyer over EZRI Konsa. It's why you're going to see Jesse Lingard back in the squad. These players that he's worked with before, who he knows and can trust, are going to get preferential treatment in terms of the squad call-up. And I sort of understand that, because one thing that you don't really want to do is they're having players making their debuts at the Euros. You want to have players in the squads beforehand so they can get used to the environment, get used to the team, get used to, most importantly, the system ahead of the major competition, which is why I think it's difficult to then find that balance, because whilst Southgate has always promised to choose players based on their form, I don't think he's necessarily achieved that, because if you're
No.
picking players based on form, are you choosing Eric Dyer, who, as you said, has been an unused sub in his last 4 games? You've got James Ward-Prowse, who has played well for Southampton, but Southampton are nowhere near the team that they were, and Ward-Prowse's influence on that team has definitely faded. You know, if I dare I say this on a Villa podcast, if you're picking players based on form, are you not taking Patrick Bamford over Ollie Watkins? Ollie Watkins is by far and away the superior player, but if you look at who scored the most goals, say, since January, Bamford leads that streets ahead. And so you've got some interesting questions to develop there. Is like, you've got to balance picking players based on form. So as I said, he's left Trent out, which is a huge move. But there's no doubt that Trent will be in the squad for the Euros. There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt that Jadon Sancho will be in the squad for the Euros. So you hope Jack Grealish as well. So there's a few players that have been left out that, that you expect will be included. But he's also had to try and balance that with form. And so it's a difficult thing to do. And look, I don't think by any stretch of the imagination that Gareth Southgate is the prodigal son. I don't think he's necessarily the man to deliver on the promise of all these current England players. But it's a very difficult job. And I think in terms of picking a squad, probably a more difficult job than any England manager has had to do in a long, long time. I don't think we've seen such a bank of talent within an England's setup for years and years and years. And so I do sympathise with him slightly on that one. But you know, as we touched on the top of the podcast, Dan, you know, how long do you go without these snubs? Whilst I'm not saying EZRI is going to, you know, be on the next flight to Lisbon. I'm just saying that how, you know, there was a few times where we felt that Jack, and do you remember the story started to run where it's like Jack was potentially leaning or going back to Ireland, you know, in that first season where he missed like 2 or 3 successive England call-ups. And it's like nonsense, I imagine. But those are already starting to creep out about EZRI, that Portugal are already looking at him. And the thing is, what you have to consider with Portugal is that the depth that they have in all these positions, I think it makes them one of, if not the favourite to win the Euros for me, especially when you look at the players that they have in attack. But you know, at centre-back, they're not exactly blessed with players. And I know the people that are listening to me on this are going to be screaming out, they've got Pepe, they've got Ruben Diaz. It's like, yes, but that's it. That's all that they have. I mean, Ruben Diaz is amazing, and if he isn't already, he's going to be one of the best centre-backs in the world, in my opinion. And then you've got Pepe, obviously, who we saw against Chelsea the other night. Was amazing, wasn't he? Not against Chelsea, against Juventus, sorry. He probably will be amazing against Chelsea, given how he's played for Porto this season. But against Juve the other night, he was just outstanding. But he's 38 and hasn't actually been called up in this current Portugal squad. And then after that, you've got Jose Fonte, who's been amazing for Lille this season, but he's 37. You've got Luis Neto, who again has been great with Sporting, who are top of their own league. He's 32. And so you've got a real changing of the guard there. And there is this growing sentiment in Portugal that this is going to be the last Euros for the likes of Pepe, for the likes of Jose Fonte, and for Neto. And then after that, you've only really got Domingos Duarte, who himself is a very good player, 26 years old, playing for Granada. And I think Portugal now have this problem whereby they're struggling to find that next centre-back that's going to come and fill Pepe's boots. And if they're struggling within their ranks, as it seems that they are, to find that consistent replacement, EZRI Konsa might be getting a tap on the shoulder pretty soon.
Yeah, and there's another outside shout for Portugal, Ruben Semedo. He's been very, very good this season. Not necessarily one of the bigger names, but I mean, you can count out Jose Font and Pepe, because I think, you know, just going off their age, I think what they've done in the game has been great. You know, I think Fonte playing, you know, he's been at Southampton. He's had a few moves abroad as well, as he said, doing well in France at the moment. But he actually really struggled in the last Euros, and you know, he'd have been 35 in that Euros. So can't begin to imagine what a 38, 39-year-old Jose Font would be doing with an equally old Pepe alongside him. But yeah, I mean, Ruben Diaz is that guy, isn't he? He's the next one. If you're looking at 7.04 average match rate, and he's averaging 1.21 blocks per 90 minutes. He's made 13 tackles in the defensive third, with 11 coming in the middle of the park, which is just as remarkable as well. You've got someone with such athleticism who can step out, make these challenges in higher areas of the pitch, more dangerous areas of the pitch. Very successful. We've got a 93.2% pass success rate, which puts him again within the top 3 percentile, I believe, of centre-backs passing success rate over the whole year, which is again an incredible statistic to have. A partnership of Ruben Diaz and EZRI Konsa is something I don't actually ever want to think about, to be honest, Dan, because it is highly possible that Manchester City come in and buy EZRI Konsa, who has been absolutely fantastic. So whilst it's a partnership that we could actually see possibly at club level, it'd be a really nice one to see on the international stage. But of course, Dan, you want the best players to play for England. He's an English player. If he ever has this conversation with Southgate and he says, listen, mate, you're not actually in my plans, I absolutely wouldn't begrudge him for going and play for Portugal. I think it's a very unique opportunity. He would have quite the opportunity to, really kind of cement a legacy with Diaz at centre back, be the next sort of Pepe, be the next Fonte, because, them two obviously won the Euros with Portugal. That will be forever remembered. When you think of, the great Spanish defenders, you instantly think of, Fernando Hierro, you think of Puyol, you think of Piqué, you think of Sergio Ramos, you think of, great Italian defenders. You've got Maldini, you've got Cannavaro, you've got, even Chiellini, players like that. Now there's a plethora of them. There aren't really for Portugal, Dan, off the top of my head. If anyone can correct me in the comments below. I'm trying to think of, iconic Portuguese defenders.
Not many.
They're not really the kind of players that they produce over in Portugal. You think of the likes of Figo, Eusebio, Ronaldo, Bruno Fernandes now. They produce very good attacking players, but not so much down into the end of the pitch. So maybe it would be quite the steal for them to actually, sign up someone like Konsa, Dan. But of course, we all want him to play for England, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think there is a lingering part of me that's like, if he did snub England and went off and spent his international days playing with Ronaldo, would I mind that too much? But no, you're absolutely right in that he wants to play for England. There is just a little bit of sex appeal in seeing him in a Portugal kit. And obviously
Absolutely.
that then does raise the opportunity of me being able to buy a Portugal kit with EZRI Konsa on the back, which also arouses me slightly. So there's two things there, which I have to say do excite me. But no, obviously you want to see him go and play for England. Hopefully he's not too far away. I think, as I was saying earlier, you've also got Matty Cash, who's eligible to go and play for Poland and stuff. So this all of a sudden, this all English back four with England could look pretty continental. It's just a couple of international breaks time. But no, I think both of them will stay with England. I think they'll sort of play the long game. It'll be worth it one day. Jack will be telling them that it took him a long time and a lot of convincing to make the England squad. And, this is sort of both Konsa and Matty Cash, their sort of breakout seasons where they've sort of come into the fore. And so I have no doubt that their time will come. Hopefully it is with England. But you're absolutely right in saying that obviously is what everyone hopes for. We wouldn't want to go and see him play for Portugal and maybe take some titles away from England one day. So we hope he stays closer to home. But I mean, hey, who could begrudge him if he did go and make that switch?
Absolutely. It's all about a legacy, as we kind of alluded to earlier, and there is, a genuine chance of one with Portugal. Hopefully, though, that legacy does lie with an England trophy, the Euros, the World Cup. He's only 23 years old. There's 4, at least 5, 6 tournaments in this guy if he can get himself in the squad, which is absolutely what we want him to do. EZRI for England. We want to know what you guys think, though. Let us know in the comments below. If Gareth Southgate snubs him, should he go to Portugal or should he wait it out? We'd love to know. And we're recording this on the Wednesday, so there will probably be a podcast tomorrow after the England game. If we have any Watkins, Mings involvements, we'll be here talking about that for you guys. So there's that to look forward to. And again, just a massive thank you for all of the support we've received on the channel recently. 4,000 subscribers, Dan. That's a bit mental, isn't it, mate? That's crazy.
Beautiful. It's beautiful. You have the giveaway shirt just behind you, don't you?
I do, right here for our chat. I can't remember who the winner is off the top of my head, but I will be reaching out to him and we will get that to him. It's right there, along with a shirt for myself as well. I mean, again, just you guys have been truly amazing. The content has been well received this season. We've listened to the feedback in regards to the previews, stuff like that. We're trying to create the best content for you as possible. And I mean, Dan, we keep saying it, but this summer, there's going to be so much content, isn't there?
Oh, beautiful. I'm ready for it, mate. Bring it on.
Absolutely. It's a big summer coming up. So if you guys haven't, subscribe, because 55% of you who are watching this right now aren't subscribed. So if you haven't, make sure you subscribe, hit the bell so you can get notified whenever we upload a podcast, a video, whatever. Like the video if you enjoyed, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe for more. Up the Villa.